Right, thank you for joining me again. Actually, Brent, we did this yesterday, and unfortunately, we had some technical issues. We did a full podcast, probably about an hour and a half, I think, and we kind of lost our audio with the microphones we're using. So we're going straight on the camera today. So I want to introduce you to Brent Holloway. Brent Holloway is here at Carry On Camping, and he's a survival guy. Is that right? That's what we're calling you, eh?
I'm known as the survival guy. Yes.
So what makes you the survival guy then? How does that happen?
Well, I've always had kind of a love of the outdoors, love of nature. I got that from my mum. She was always fostering animals and kind of instilled that into me. And then when I was 16, started going walking, camping on my own, and just fell in love with nature. Started like learning how to build shelters and kind of carry that on from as a kid, building dens. And it's just something I've over the years kind of like developed these skills, and I've always done it for myself. But then when Tim came to me with the idea for Carry On Camping, and he asked me to teach at the first festival, it just kind of I thought these skills, teach them to other people, teach them to the younger generation. And that's one of the things I actually did find really satisfying, because I remember the first Carry On Camping. There was a lady who she'd never made a fire before for herself, and then just so I taught her how to taught her how to make a fire, and then just to see the empowering like smile and look on her face. Because it's quite an empowering thing to do, and it made me feel good just that like I helped her to be able to kind of to get that. So I've enjoyed teaching at Carry On Camping, and I hope to for like many years.
So when you started when you were younger, then so you went camping on your own. Was that in a tent? You weren't building a shelter then, were you? You have a tent with you, or did you build a shelter? Were you going raw in then from the off, or how did that work?
So I've never done tents. Granted, I've got a tent with me, but that's literally just to store my stuff in. So while I've got that in the tent, I've been sleeping in the Viking hut every night.
Well, I think we need to mention that right now as well, because obviously we talked about it yesterday, and we're trying to remember the things that we discussed yesterday. But so Brent, you and the guys have built this Viking hut. And we've done a bit of footage around it, and it's quite incredible. It's like that little hobbit's house. It's so warm in here, I must say, and the air out there at the moment isn't cold, but it's getting cooler. But in here you can feel the heat. It's pretty impressive, really. So how did that work? So you've dug a big trench by the looks of it, and then it's all natural resource, apart from that you've got some tarp, I say, but everything else, you've got mud on there, you've got straw in there.
It's about 95% sort of all natural. And there's I think maybe about 8 people. So it's like a nice team of us over about a 2-week period that we built it. And the main theme that we always wanted to go was kind of like a traditional kind of Viking hut. So I've putting in a little bit into that kind of like prepping, resourcefulness, finding what you can. So like for the fire pit, we've got like some scrap metal that we use for the chimney. So it's a little bit kind of like urban kind of like prepping. Oh, that's some resources. We'll use that. But at the core though, we've kept the kind of like the Viking hut theme as the core of it though.
It is cool, I must admit. It's pretty cool.
And it's one of those things. Even when it's cold and cold out there, it's nice and warm in here. But then when it's really hot out there, it's nice and cool in here. And
right.
I've absolutely been loving living basically.
I bet you have. And I bet that fire, when you've got that fire going there, I bet it's red hot in here.
So I'm basically in the middle of the woods, cooking my tea in the fire in a Viking hut. Like I honestly don't want to go home.
I bet you don't. It's blissful. If we can go back to those times when you were out camping though. Now, starting a fire. You mentioned starting a fire. Obviously, in our society, we have been softened up. In every, and we'll talk about this. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But when you talk about starting a fire, campers these days generally will have the wood. They go and buy the wood already chopped for them. They'll have the cubes, if you like, the paraffin cubes and everything else, and light a match or whatever, and away you go. You can't fail, can you? You can't fail. So, are you teaching people how to build a fire without paraphernalia, if you like, without having to light a match? Is that
a bit of both? So in terms of teaching people and like developing these skills, also a very very quick also point on an earlier question in terms of the tent and the shelter as well.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't do the tents. Like I started going out just with a tarp initially, just putting like a tarp up.
Right.
Started developing like those skills.
Yeah, and that's at 16.
Yeah, and at 16, and so with the shelter, but also with back onto the fire.
Yeah.
There's a. Have you heard of John Lofty Wiseman?
No.
He's ex SAS. He's wrote this book, the SAS Survival Handbook.
Right.
And you can get like a pocket Collins Gem version, brand new online for £5. It fits in your pocket.
Right.
And if I could recommend any book to somebody, it would be that one.
It's that. Right. Okay.
So from the shelter building and also from the fire building, what I would basically do is every time I'd go out, I would learn a new skill, a new way to make a fire, a new way to build a shelter, or ID a new plant.
Yeah.
And so that's also like all these things I've learned is what I teach. So at the when I'm making the fire, I'll teach people how to do it completely natural. So for your tinder, rather than cotton wool balls or something like that, you could various things from dry sphagnum moss to birch bark's really good for your tinder.
Right.
Making feather sticks and even just getting shavings and things.
Right. Okay.
There's do all the natural stuff, but then there's multiple ways to make a fire, and we shouldn't. It's not all about how our ancestors did it thousands of years ago, because ultimately a lot of these skills might be used in a survival situation. So whatever works.
Yeah.
So there's even things like some steel wire wool and a 9-volt battery.
Oh yeah, I've heard this. I think I've seen it on a video actually. Yeah, it sparks, does it?
Yeah, it's fantastic because you need a 9-volt battery for the positive and the negative, and you're basically completing the connection with the steel wire wool.
Yeah.
And it works best with the finer stuff rather than the coarse. And it's just a case of getting a clump of it, kind of break the connections, get lots of surface area on it, and then you can literally just touch the battery to it, and then it just bursts into flame. And
there you go.
So I do a bit of both. The more traditional stuff. But then there's kind of, cause like I said, in a survival situation, you do whatever works and whatever kit you've got. So it's
sure. Okay, so from those skill sets as well, did you do any hunting as well? Were you learning how to survive in terms of feeding yourself, foraging and things like that? So you were learning all those kind of skills.
Yeah, from anything from tracking and hunting, but. With hunting, it's one of those things that you can never guarantee. Like in films in Hollywood, you'll see somebody going out into a forest. Half an hour later, they come back with like a deer on them.
With a bow.
Yeah, exactly. But in
a spear and a bow.
Yeah, but in reality, it's not quite like that. You might find that you go out and you come back with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So when I was going out and I was learning these things, I'd still have some provisions with me, but. I'd often not have to use them, whether it be even finding things like wild garlic to season my food and catch some fish as well. There's been a couple of times when I'd go out with just some seasoning and a bag of rice and see what we could add to that.
So you're not just surviving though; you're making a garnishing meal here.
Although one of my favourite meals though was me and a couple of my friends Paul and Jake. We in Ennerdale, my favourite place in the world, Ennerdale.
Right.
And we're out camping there for a week and just using rice and a stock cube as the base, but everything else we kind of there's a couple of roots that we added. Some like wild garlic, but there wasn't much ingredients. It was the best meal I've ever had because one of the things we had, we tried to get some fish.
Yeah,
and we probably spent about 3 hours basically by the riverbank, swatting flies for bait, taking like thorns and strips of bark and branches and like sort of like weaving them for like line and thread.
Yeah,
spent about 3 hours doing this and just like sitting with the line trying to get like these little stickleback. But eventually they weren't biting, and we're getting hungry. So after about 3 hours, my friend Paul, he's got his wash bag, and he literally just like scooped them out the river. I was like, well, that works, but yeah.
Well, anything that works though is the key. Isn't it?
And then we just basically crushed them into it, like all the oils and everything from the fish, and it was only a couple of ingredients, but it was so nice.
Was it? Yeah. So you've got some good memories of doing all this as well, then.
Oh yeah, like some of my favourite memories of when I'm out walking and camping, and that's why it's kind of a bit of a shame when we see kids nowadays like they spend the whole like growing up in front of a screen.
Yeah.
And while in our sort of like evolving digital world, it's important to understand tech and things like that. We shouldn't lose the old ways, and we shouldn't lose that love of nature. So I think it's very important to kind of instill that to the younger generation.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, Brent. You know, and I think if the talk goes like yesterday, we'll end up doing a bit of a tech talk, and when we get to that tech talk, I think that we may end up heading to Rumble. We've got some things that we want to discuss, haven't we? But ultimately, you're right. I think that children are born now with the device in their hand. You know, we are a generation that didn't have that device in our hand. I always had a fondness for computers. I really did, you know, and my career, if you like, a career as such, was in digital creation, you know, so computing was something I was always interested in. But I always had that time to go out as well. You know, we were in that in-between stage, I think, where, being in my room and playing on the computer was something I enjoyed doing, but I really enjoy going out with my mates, playing football till the end of the evening, or you know, knocking on your mates. I mean, nowadays the kids don't do anything like that. They Snapchat their friends, they're talking online, they're literally not going out into the open air, and they're missing this opportunity, aren't they, to be in what is the creation, really. You know, we need to be out here, breathing this air, being in nature, because we are nature.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, well, I think we often kind of remove ourselves from nature, and because a lot of people's experience of, say, food is just something you pick off a supermarket shelf, and we're kind of removed from the process. Like, very few people maybe go out fishing or hunting for a rabbit and taking that up and cooking it, and there's a lot of things we kind of like removed ourselves from nature, and we forget that we are actually a part of that. And I think it is very important, as you mentioned, with our generation kind of got the best of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think our generation is very important that we not only kind of encourage the sort of like the development and survival of the ability to kids to learn in the digital worlds, but also to reinforce and bring back all these natural skills and the love of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And like Carry On Camping, it's not only is it a fantastic festival, family friendly, it's got stuff on for everyone.
Yeah. But
then with the bushcraft classes that we teach, we basically do there's kids coming along doing that, and just seeing the kids' faces light up as like they get a fire going.
Yeah,
or like just getting a shelter built. It's fantastic to see, and I think it's just definitely something that our generation needs to kind of reinforce. Get kids doing that.
100%. So talk me through what skills you're teaching kids and adults here at Carry On Camping this year. What have you been doing?
Yeah, so we've had a range of things. So we've got a good bushcraft team this year. So we've got Survival Steve that's been doing prepping, and he's got a really good bug out vehicle. He's got a lot of knowledge on that subject. Mm-hmm. We've got Holly, who's doing foraging and woodland cooking, mm-hmm. and each day she's produced something different, some really nice meals. I think today was a nice nettle soup she made.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Nice. It could have been yesterday, but it's really nice though.
Right. Okay.
And then Carmela's been doing kind of using nettles and brambles and things and stripping them, basically creating cordage just from like natural fibres. Mm-hmm. And then we've got another couple that like doing wood like a wooden lathe, but like a more like traditional one, like a foot kind of like turning,
really like pressing it. Yeah.
And then me myself, I've done the kind of like an overarching kind of approach to the subject So from fire making to shelter building, to if you're in a survival situation, some do's and don'ts. If you're basically food, different ways to gather food, to hunt, traps, things like that.
Okay.
Things to avoid. Because, for example, like just as an example, are you familiar with cow parsley?
If you're enjoying everything that we're doing here at Drake, Michigan, please subscribe, ring my bell, and let's enjoy this journey together.
No.
So it's common among roadsides, and got white little flowers and that sort of kind of formation. You see it also on the roadside.
Okay.
And it's a harmless plant. You can pretty much eat anything from the flower down to the root.
Okay.
But there's two plants that look very, very similar to it. First is hemlock.
Yeah.
Which it basically attacks your central nervous system. It can cause respiratory arrest and can be fatal.
Right.
And the other one's hogweed, which is
heard of hogweed. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically can cause really, really severe burns. Okay. And all three of them look very, very similar.
Oh, right. Okay. So it's knowing. This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. Unless you study it the way you studied it, if you were put into a survival situation, most people are not going to be able to manage without some kind of knowledge, really. I certainly wouldn't know what plant. I don't know what plants are what. So I know that I would have to follow someone's lead or have a manual or something to help me. The food prices are going up for one. So I mean, I hope that society doesn't come to a point where people have to go down this route. But saying that, on the other side of it, the food that you buy in the supermarkets is pretty shit anyway. So it's all full of GMO, it's full of chemicals and this, that and the other. I know you can't avoid everything, but ultimately if you knew that there is certain herbs and certain plants out there that are going to give you what your body needs, I mean, that's an amazing thing. Foraging sounds like an incredible skill to have.
Yeah, and it's so it is important to be able to identify what you're eating, because as with that example I use, so as a general rule I say if you don't know what something is, don't eat it.
Yeah.
But that's why kind of ending up in a survival situation, say if you're just going out walking or camping, and those are the opportunities to kind of develop and learn these skills should you have to actually rely on them.
Yeah.
And on the foraging thing, there's a good little book, Food for Free, that and the John Lofty Wiseman essay Survival Guides also information.
Okay. Yeah.
But just taking these, both of them, you get pocket versions with them, so just have them in your pocket.
Yeah.
Going out for a walk and try and identify these things, and just maybe if you can forage stuff, take it back to your kitchen and cook with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for people to be able to do, and even on the hunting side as well. Because I have done hunting. I prefer rather than going for game, I prefer to go for fish. It's kind of easier because you can never rely on going out hunting and coming back with something.
Yeah.
But with fishing, while it's enjoyable, just like sitting at the side of a river with a rod doing that, it's not very efficient in a survival situation.
Yeah.
So usually when I'm out camping, what I'll do is I'll actually build a fish trap. So say you've got the the flow of the river coming down this way.
Mm-hmm.
Just using rocks, I'll kind of build up a pool on the outside of the river.
Yeah.
And then with the force of the water flowing through, and also fish kind of prefer the calmer waters. Basically I'll set that up. I'll go away and collect firewood, make a shelter, do anything else I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can come back later, and then if we've got fish, it's literally a case of getting a really, really big stick, whacking the surface of the water as hard as you can, and it temporarily stuns the fish.
Yeah.
And then you can reach in and then knife back of the head, kill it quickly and humanely.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got your tea. And even if you don't have anything to cook it on, you can actually wrap it in leaves, and you can actually cook it in the embers of a fire, even if you're having your pots and things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my things I prefer to do when I'm out camping, just doing little things like that.
Okay, so and again, also thinking about the herbs and things like that. Obviously the Rockefellers changed everything in terms of making sure the natural remedies were no longer suitable for and obviously the petrol kind of pharmaceuticals were the way forward.
Yeah.
So we've been taken away, educated. We've been educated in our systems and societies, haven't we, over a period of time, away from nature, away from what we were here to be. So this knowledge needs to come back, I think, you know. So what you're doing is really important, because you've got children coming here and you're teaching these children, and hopefully something sparking and igniting in those kids that makes them want to do what you're doing, or at least continue that study. And like most things, it's like a snowball effect. You teach a few and then they talk about it to their mates, and hopefully they'll be inspired, you know. So kudos to you, because this is the way forward. As things become more difficult, as the systems that come in and become more difficult and then trap the humankind even more, everything is here for us.
Yeah.
Literally everything is here for us. It's just knowing.
Absolutely. And it's so in this location for Carry On Camping 2023, we've got a great location, and so yeah, as you can see out there, we've got the woodland, we've got all the healing the like the bushcraft area. But in terms of like resources, say if we were kind of to have this as a community, you can get all sorts of resources from just from nature. So in terms of if we were building up communities, having all the resources that are out there, granted, it's not quite as simple as just going into the woods and living like kings in the woods.
No.
It is hard. Some people often could be like under the illusion that they can just pack up a bag, go out into the woods, and like
live a happy lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah. I can imagine the weather sometimes won't. You know, they'll soon be back home.
Yeah. So it's there's plenty of resources out in the woods, but there is also, it's kind of again, as we mentioned, where it's not about doing everything that ancestors did thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of having that the best of both worlds.
Yes.
So like with our generation, seeing like the old and the new. So having even in a community where you've got your natural resources, but then bringing in things like aquaponics and things like that, or having some underground kind of like greenhouses and things, and kind of having, it is possible to be self-sufficient on the land, so having like the best of both doing that. So whether that be in terms of your communities, and on the point of communities, one of the things that Carry On Camping is always been about, because Tim's always reinforced to me that one of his core tenets has always been about communities, and he always wants to bring people together.
Yes.
And this year we're doing, we've got the Carry On Rocking end of May, but also end of July. We've got Carry On Communities, and that's going to be about teaching people important life skills. Yeah. Anything from like sort of like labouring to like farming, different types of agriculture, and kind of empowering people with these kind of skills. Yeah. And I think that's been a very important thing that Tim's always wanted to do, and that's kind of where he sees things. Because with what we know, what's going on with the Great Reset, granted we're in a bit of a lull at the minute, but they're going to go full steam ahead again soon. So one of the things that we can do to kind of counteract that is, if they're going to create a kind of almost like a dual society, then why wait for them?
And you're talking about prepping as well. So you were saying about Steve. Just can we go back to that a little bit? You said about bug out. What does that mean? Bug out. You had a bug out vehicle. You said. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the outside, obviously we can't see, but outside we've got that nice bug out vehicle. But in terms of prepping, you've got like bugging in and bugging out. And so if to bug in would be whatever situation comes along, whether it be a breakdown society or like civil unrest, whatever it might be. Bugging in would be using your home base, whether it be your home flat, whatever, but using your home base with the way all your supplies and equipment and things are, and your security. And you basically stay put. And then bugging out is where you'll get your sort of like your bug out bag that's like pre-packed with the important survival gear, and even things like family photos and documents, just whatever you need, and basically getting out of Dodge and getting out of the situation. So that's kind of like bugging in and bugging out. And for people that are new to prepping, a lot of people kind of come under the illusion that, right, I've got me bug out bag, I'm going to go into the woods, and that's going to be me. But it is difficult, especially if you don't have any prior knowledge or prior education to it.
Yeah.
So I'd always recommend, by default, you prep to kind of bug in, but you have your grab bag, your bug out bag if you need to kind of bug out. And there's all sorts. It's kind of like a very broad subject in terms of prepping, from whether you're having your stores of food and water to your basic supplies and gas stoves and things in case the power goes out. You grab bags, but then you can kind of go further into kind of growing your own food and being self-sufficient. It's kind of like a broad spectrum prepping, but it's something I encourage everybody kind of get into. It is important.
Yeah. Okay. So you in terms of where you see this going right now, I mean, like you mentioned before, we're in this lull period. I mean, that feels like to me like it's a sort of a false sense of, they do this, don't they? Let's be honest. So it'll be, everything's okay now. We're back to normal. So I mean, they're gonna do that, because if they can twist the knife a little bit at some point and put the fear in people and get that control back in people, they're going to do that. So is that how you feel things happening at the moment? You feel right now we've got this false sense of security going on. People are just kind of, we're all right, we're back to normal, we're back to work, we're going to our concerts, we're going to our football matches, everything's back to normal, but let's test them a little bit with the 15-minute cities. Let's poke a stick. Let's see what kind of reaction we get, and then we'll go from there. What's your thoughts at the moment on that?
Yeah. So we're definitely in a lull, and the sort of like the end game of what the globalists want in their agenda. If they were to go kind of full.
Go to Rumble now. I'm going to move this to Rumble because we're going to talk deep now.
Yeah, time for some truth now.